So I think that the vehicles should be like that's I think that's the most important part for me is like how those play, how good they actually are. Like it's really difficult to tell how good the vehicles are in some contexts. Like for example, I thought that like very few were playable, but like Craig, what is it? Craig Wesco posted a list that like used vehicles. I was like, wow, that's like Sarah Avenger but better.
Yeah, I think a bunch of them are real good, and once we get to the cards, we'll do the artifacts first for exactly that reason. But
I think we could talk about contraptions or whatever create. You know, the precur the whatever the about as close to Goblin Rigger as you can get or whatever.
which one's that?
What is it? You know, the assemble contraption. What was that?
Yeah, yeah.
It was about as close as they've ever gotten to wording that was similar to that.
What, the create?
Yeah, the create, which is a good like the keyword is create
Yeah,
instead, but they're making these things like evergreen, but even the mechanic itself is kind of cool. Like
yeah.
a lot of the cards make it so there's tokens more often than there was before, like how Origins was.
Right. Yeah. So if you don't know, it's no longer like put a 1/1 servo onto the battlefield under your control. It just says create a 1/1 servo, which saves a lot of text box real estate as well as just being a lot like more readable, and you know what it does instantly instead of having to sort of like parse parts of this sentence to like get to the end result of the card. And I think that that's just an evergreen. That's a full change. Like that's what it is in Magic now, going
Well,
forward.
I was thinking about that, and so what I kind of came up with was like, what if that's not true? Like, what if because like create here it like implies like specifically servo. So like if they wanted to do
Right.
something like create a sapperling, they couldn't say like create or like they had to be like create like a servo token.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I think it is now just the way that it's
Oh, I
going to
see
be
what you're saying.
worded
Right. So
going
create a
forward.
one servo. Never mind. Yeah, you're right.
But it is also like really apt that it was this set and these like artifact things were the first ones to be created. I think that that's really flavorful. But also, I think that it's just a smart thing, like a smart change, because like text box real estate is an actual resource that design and development has to sort of partition out correctly as they just put more and more abilities on every single card, which is its own conversation of complexity creep. But I think create is the new standard, and I like it.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree with you now. I wonder if this was motivated by flavor text or by mechanics.
Right. That I don't know, but they've
Like
been doing
I wonder
stuff
if
like this for a while, right?
they
Like,
definitely and at some point it's good for newer players to have keywords and then there's like an inflection point where all of a sudden it's more problematic to have too many keywords.
right. Well, they've been doing stuff like this for, I mean, where they made like goes to the graveyard from the battlefield to dies, or this and another creature deal damage equal to their power to each other into fight.
Right, and fight I think that was the most controversial for me. Like fight felt really weird.
Well, now because there's a bunch of cards that fight and a bunch of cards that are just like this thing deals its damage to that, right? So when they're worded like near the same, except at the end of the sentence, there's like this one other clause of like to each other, then that's like, I don't know, that's harder to parse. Whereas if it's fights, it's fights. And if it's the long thing, then you know that it's just deal a damage.
Yeah, and it also in some way it kind of they've done a good job at this too because when they wanted to do it differently, they just go ahead and do it differently. But there's a
Right.
certain amount of building space that where they have to kind of if it's close enough to fight, they might as well make it fight. But they also like resist that too because I've seen some instances where like isn't this just fight and it's like a little bit different.
Right. Well, like things like Clear Shot, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
the way that Clear Shot and Prey Upon and those types of cards read is that they're all so close to each other that I think it's cool that it's more distinct now. What was the start of this conversation?
We were talking about create this keyword.
Yeah, yeah, Create's awesome.
The values for that.
We touched on vehicles, but we'll do that more as we get into the cards. Let's talk about energy. Mechanic E.
Yeah. First of all,
So,
it really ruins my magiccards.info Oracle searching. I have no idea how this is going to play into, like energy is like a new color that you can't search for without doing like something specific. So if they have it be just Kaladesh, I can make that its own conversation.
Right.
That said, there's like certain energy cards I'm like, what the?
Well,
what are you talking about? What do you mean?
Yeah.
You're giving me the energy right off the bat. This ability is ridiculous. Like there's that Virtuoso card that's like 1 red, 1 white, 1 red, 1 blue, and 1, like a 2/3. When it comes into play, make a flying creature. Well, except no, it's but way better than that. They give you the, they give you the energy for it, and then you can make it right away.
Right.
The only thing that is weird to me that I don't know if they just couldn't get over or they couldn't figure out how to fix it is like it's still a trigger. Like it didn't say as it comes into play. It says like when it comes into play. So you can still just kill everything in response.
Right.
And that seems bizarre. Like that, I don't like that that's the way that is.
It is a bit weird. So the parallel is charge counters, right? If you look back at the Mirrodins, those are where Marrow tried to make energy happen and got shut down. And pretty much everything that has charge counters would have had energy instead. And those cards differ in that one specific instance, right? They enter the battlefield with charge counters, not when it enters the battlefield, put charge counters on it. There's not that in-between step. But also, like, putting charge counters on your thing, being a trigger and it dying in response, those charge counters just don't have anything to go on. But energy, you still just get the energy when the trigger resolves, and then you can use that energy for something else. So I think that's where the design divide is.
Yeah, and like, what do you think that, I don't know how, what like technicality you want to have on this, as in like, what, where you want the focus of the conversation to be. But in my head, I just wonder, like, was that like a discussion? Was that like a painful point of discussion?
Oh, I'm sure it was. I'm sure it was like 6 years ago, and then they had to have it again. Like Marrow's been trying to put this into a set for a while, and it's a fairly intuitive idea, right? Like, if an alien like learned magic and was asked to come up with like 100 new mechanics, guaranteed something like this would be one of the mechanics, right? It's a pretty logical conclusion to move towards. Sure. And so I think that it's something that R&D had to have considered heavily, like multiple times over the years. One thing that Wizards did not consider heavily enough is that they forgot to put energy counters in the set.
Yeah, that was insane. I cannot believe that.
Yeah,
it's beyond repair.
If you don't know,
like my Wizards competency, like
yeah, they haven't made it.
It's really tough. Like that one's like, dude, guys, like I get blue hurricanes, I do not understand energy missing.
Yeah, this is an oversight akin to like not taking out Arabian Nights Mountain. Like,
yeah, like poison counters, like forget those, and it's totally fine. I just get it. And like, there's nothing more important. Like, get dice with energy counters on them out there immediately. Like,
for those that don't know, what we're talking about is the actual physical cards that say like 1 energy that you would use, like sort of as your emblem or as a token, that go in that sort of rules insert slot in the booster pack. They just didn't put an energy one in. They just stone forgot, which is weird because they're obviously going to fix it going forward, like for the next rounds of printing of the set, but for the pre-release and stuff, they just made like a little thing that's has the energy symbol on it and is kind of like a greenish yellowish background, and they just said store owners print out a bunch of these and use them, which is something I don't think they've ever had to do before.
It's just, man.
It's weird. And Greg, you don't have my webcam on, so you're gonna see this on the stream with the delay. But thankfully, I ordered these before. Oh, you can't even see it because the green screen. Oh no!
I actually blocked you because I couldn't handle the 10-second delay.
There you go.
I'm looking at you now.
I ordered about 20 of these when
Pokemon ones, yeah.
Yeah, during the during Worlds when they were like previewing everything and they said like this is Mechanic E. And I'm like, oh yeah, of course I'm going to get, electric energies for Pokemon. And then like 2 weeks later, they're like, oh, we forgot energies. And I'm like, step ahead of you.
I wonder now if like those are going to go way up in price, like in like a month.
That'd be interesting.
Like, because people are going to be like using those almost exclusively. Are they even going to bother making the switch to real energy cards?
I would doubt it, like, because you're gonna need them for the first, month the set is out, and once you need them for that long, you're just gonna buy them, and then once you have them, you're not gonna not use them.
And I imagine that electric energy is like your favorite or version, or like something you grew up with. Or I imagine there's some connection there. But when I think of energy, I think the blue energy, like just even before Pokemon.
Well, I did these ones because the thunder symbol looks like the Kaladesh energy symbol. There was no deep-seated subconscious.
Well, yeah, I mean, I might get like distinguishing between the colors of the cards that produce energy is a little bit. I would. That's got to be insane.
Yeah, well,
that's my first instinct.
I've definitely seen pictures on Facebook and stuff, and like I tweeted that I bought these, and people tweeted at me like, "Dude, you're not getting like the foil promo rainbow energies that are like $6 each."
Yeah.
People are gonna go ham for.
Which means I think there's still time to just like if you want to speculate. You have some disposable income. You want to see some return on your investment. I suggest huge ROI opportunities here.
As far as specking for Kaladesh, I don't think Pokemon energy cards are the highest rate of return you could get.
Yeah, but it's a return. All you gotta do is choose who's ranking them. Once you're over 20%, just take whatever you can get. Take what's on your mind.
Words to live by.
Yeah, that's what I do. That's why I ended up with all this mashed potato.
The other weird thing about the printing, well, there's two more weird things about the printing of Kaladesh specifically, and the next one is that the card stock for Japanese cards is different. Have you heard about this?
Well, I've always kind of known that like Asian markets in general, like the continent Asia, like have like a lot of different rules between like art and manufacturing. But I didn't actually know the material was straight up different. That's new to me.
Because it's new to Kaladesh.
Oh, well, all right. Makes sense now.
They didn't outright say it, but it seems that, the only difference between the old cardstock and the new cardstock that's being used, because everywhere else is still using the same cardstock. The new cardstock is only in Japan for Kaladesh, and I think going forward. And the only thing that they cited about the new cardstock that's different to the old and now regular is that it is recyclable. So I think that it's some legal thing where like if you just print a shitload of paper products, it needs to be recyclable.
Oh, I thought you meant like I thought the legal issue is the opposite. Like if you're going to print a lot of paper products, make sure they're not recyclable like an American rule we have.
No, I think that it's in Japan. They're like, yeah, you're printing like a ton of this cardboard, and so it has to like adhere to this law where it has to be recyclable. Because I can't think of any other reason they would ever change it.
Well, now that makes me wonder. There's spec opportunities there, right?
If you think that cheating is going to be a big part of the market,
I see. There's something different here too. Like mint English Goblin guides are worth like 4 times more than near mint Goblin guides, or something crazy like in Japan. Like they really like these mint. Cards or whatever, like it just matters to them. Now there's going to be an additional level of difference, of discernibility.
Right.
Which means like, one version is going to be much more desired than the other, whether it's their own or the one from across the sea. So like, but then once it's chosen,
but most of that,
a huge difference.
Most of that is aesthetic, right? Like Americans like English speakers like cards that are not in English, and non-English speakers like cards that are in English because they're like interesting and aesthetically different. The problem is that those aesthetic differences don't alter gameplay, but a different card stock that they've like admitted is thicker, that could be discernible. That's a whole other axis for these decisions to be made on.
Right. Well, imagine if this was made late in the game, that the BCI didn't catch wind of it, and all of a sudden the BCI is like, "What? There's a ton of cheating we can't catch now.
Right.
A ton of cheating we can't keep track of."
Well, that's why they have to announce it, right?
They
can't just leave us in the dark, but also they don't want to be like, "Hey, cheaters, here's an easy out."
Well, that's like a solved issue, though, in my opinion. Like in the security community for like software, like they say like we're going to release it so that people fix it quickly, or like the credible threat of releasing the exploit. Like you have a month to fix this before we release it, but we're going to release it because it's important that transparency exists.
Right.
So like I would say it's way better that people have access to the knowledge. Like
no, I agree, but
stores.
And again, it's hard to say without getting my hands on the cards, which obviously nobody has their hands on the cards yet. But rest assured, I will be getting a stack of Japanese cards as soon as possible to see if I can, suss out a difference. Because they say that it's probably not detectable, by human hands, especially in sleeves. But they've said the same things about like beta lands and the Urza promo basics and foils and all these things that are just like demonstrably different and like exploitable, which I'm gonna do. I've had like videos and stuff written about those other topics for some time now, and I've just been kind of waiting for the platform to release them, which my show Avant-Garde is like where I was going to, but eventually, not anytime soon. But then now this kind of adds another, like, because it's gotten to the point where if somebody is playing with like all foil lands and no foil spells, everybody knows that they're just blatantly cheating, right? So now we have to figure out if like the Japanese, like the only 4 Japanese Kaladesh cards in my deck are the 4 whatevers, the 4 Chandras, then it's like, all right, well, because aesthetically, Japanese cards are in high demand, and I understand that people like playing with Japanese cards, but they're your only Japanese cards, and there's this card stock thing, and sorry, but you're DQ'd. Like, that's going to be an interesting
You know what happened to Matt Nass? With Hell's Thunder?
The promo Hell's Thunders?
Yeah, he had to get like 4 Hell's Thunder, or no, so his opponent had 4 Hell's Thunder, and Matt Nass got him a game loss.
Yeah.
Because there's the precedent for this is like trivial. Like it's definitely going to be abused. It's just a matter of like, this gives judges that would otherwise be like hometown heroes like a lot of ammunition.
Yeah, exactly, and cheaters in smaller play pools that might not be aware of such things. Just another thing. Again, we haven't touched them yet, so we don't know how bad they are, but I imagine, if they're anything like if it's significantly enough thicker that I had to say, yeah, they are thicker, but you wouldn't be able to notice, I bet we'll be able to notice.
Absolutely, especially if the announcement's not very. If there's any vague language in the announcement, it's for sure noticeable.
Yeah,
because if it's not noticeable, they'll just say it.
Exactly. That's my inclination as well. Moving on to the last sort of interesting thing about Kaladesh specifically, which is that there are cards in Kaladesh that are not in Kaladesh.
Yeah, that freaks me out.
This is the Planeswalker deck cycle, I guess, where there are cards that are in the Planeswalker decks that are technically part of Kaladesh and will be legal in standard and modern, everywhere. But they will be legal and standard for as long as Kaladesh is. And when Kaladesh rotates, those will rotate also. And you can't open them in booster packs. They don't exist besides in these Planeswalker dual decks.
Yeah, and it's luckily none of them are like something I'm super like excited about. So
right, which is by design.
Any Planeswalker is enough for me to think like I don't want it to be filtered away from my gatherer searches. That's
exactly
my primary concern.
Exactly. Well, and like for again, so they did specifically go out of their way to make these cards not tournament viable and only like playable and fun inside of the context of this dual deck. But at the same time, there isn't really a Planeswalker that you could make bad enough to not be playable, but good enough to be fun. Like every Planeswalker has seen Fringe play, just by the nature of Planeswalkers are powerful from a conceptual, theoretical standpoint.
Yeah, it's really tough to make a card like, you know, I know I'm an exception here, but I consider every card playable by default.
Yeah.
But like, you know, even my like primary filter, it doesn't take out Planeswalkers of any kind, you know?
So there are the 2 Planeswalkers, and then there's a common spell, a rare spell that finds the Planeswalker, an uncommon card, an uncommon creature that deals with the Planeswalker in some way, and a like Elfin Sanctuary type dual land for both colors, green and red.
Right.
And like looking at them, I mean, we'll get back to the Planeswalkers, but like Flame Lash is just what's that card called? Lightning Strike?
Lightning Strike, which has seen play.
Exactly. Like there's a good amount of like red deck wins type cards in Kaladesh, and I could totally see, you know, a red reach based aggro deck being viable, and I could totally see that deck wanting to Flame Lash, right? And even if it's not the most efficient card, like maybe that's just what you need up top.
Right. I mean, people. I mean, it doesn't gain life, so obviously this comparison isn't totally apt. But like 4 mana removal spells that also dome are historically viable.
Right. And so I have no problem with Flame Lash being in Kaladesh if it's in Kaladesh. What I don't like is if you have somebody that memorizes, like takes hours to study the spoiler to know every card, and then goes to their first standard FNM, playing their, you know, tempo control deck, and they tap out on the last turn because the opponent couldn't possibly have any card that could kill them, and then they just get like end step Flame Lash, untap Flame Lash, you know, where like I'm at 8 and not 7, so I can't die. Like that's gonna happen to somebody.
Yeah,
somebody's gonna die to a card they don't know exists in standard.
Yeah, I mean, I think that happens more often than like we can, like, you know, we take pains to do that. So like, but I think that happens to people like just generally, but usually the people that want to avoid that, the subsection that also doesn't know that the other thing exists, luckily is relatively small, but the shame is compounding. Not only have you just lost, but the judge call is going to be embarrassing.
Right.
So like it's going to hurt for that subsection.
Like it's not even that it doesn't like distinguish on the card at all. I mean, there's something weird about the set number in the bottom left, but the set symbol is just straight up the Kaladesh symbol. Like they're not. I don't know. It's a weird and frustrating thing, and it's also very dangerous, right? Like if they can just exactly, if they can just print cards that are legal and standard without them being in the set, and you have to buy this peripheral thing, like you have to spend $15 on the Planeswalker deck to get this one single, then what's to stop them from just printing like a $35 dual deck that has you know, one Planeswalker that every, you know, blue deck needs 4 copies of.
And then we're gonna have a situation where we're like, you know, cards without a gold expansion symbol are gonna cost $10.
Yeah.
You know, it's gonna be like a common, but like it's not actually a common. It's just gonna be weird. It's
yeah.
gonna be strange.
It's again, I don't think that
I don't like it. It occurs to me as like if it's a good idea, it's for all the wrong reasons. Like whoever like wanted this, it wasn't like it was a good idea executed poorly. It was a bad idea executed somewhat well.
Yeah.
I don't like the idea at all. It's a bad thing for a player that doesn't want to have to worry about this. I also think it's just kind of bad, period.
Yeah.
I suppose if they know what they're doing and it attracts new players, it's an overall net positive for the game. I just don't know that yet.
Right. Because, like, I don't know. You think about like Jace the Mind Sculptor or whatever, where it's like, if they do this $35 thing that I'm saying is theoretically possible because of this precedent, then at least it's not $100 Jace the Mind Sculptor. But the difference is that the $100 is, you know, Star Cities or whatever. That's a secondary market thing. By taking the onus of the secondary market onto themselves, Wizards can directly profit from them rather than like hoping that it'll drive up booster sales. They can just say, oh no, we'll just print this and it'll be printing X dollars. Like that's like a really easy thing for them to calculate and a really tempting thing for them to calculate if they can get away with it, which this implies that they think they could, or this implies that they theoretically could.
You're so right. There's another piece to this too, like what you were just saying, like if they account for it in their like math, and why wouldn't they? That's kind of a scary thought, but it actually kind of gives Hasbro a foothold in game decisions with like a lot of legitimacy and a difficult to argue point of view. Like,
yeah.
You guys like. You guys are actively deciding not to make this much money now that we know it makes this much money.
Right, exactly.
It really gives some data that that Hasbro could use to like as ammunition to provide influence in the game, which as far as I can tell is overall all negative. Like,
exactly.
Hasbro's like a demon.
Yeah, I love Wizards so much and dislike what Hasbro does to Wizards so much that I wholeheartedly agree. Let's quickly go over these. We touched on Flame Lash. Liberating Combustion is just 6 damage to a creature, and then you search for the Chandra, which we'll come back to. This 3/2 is unlikely to matter. It's just a 3/2.
If it's good, the format's bad.
Yeah, exactly. It's a 3/2 for 3 if you control exactly that Chandra.
I thought it was any Planeswalker. Yeah, this is terrible.
No, exactly that Chandra. Any Chandra. Not any Planeswalker, and not specifically that Chandra, but any Chandra.
Still bad. Yeah, I'm with.
Still bad. Even with an overly playable 4-drop Chandra, this 3-drop is still bad. And then the duel, like these duels have seen play before, but I don't think it's a big deal. It's only scary if like there comes a deck that like needs 4 of these duels, then all of a sudden this supposed common is now like a $5 card because you only get 2 of them in this $35 or in this $15 thing.
Well, now you're turning my gears a little bit here because all it needs is one set in the future, like this next set, to not have a good land mana base, and these are $10 cards.
Exactly, which is not ideal, but
absolutely. Yeah, go on.
I'm just going over this quickly because they don't really matter, hopefully. But the green creature, it's a 2/4 for 4 with reach, and if you control any Nisa, then it is a 4/4 vigilance. 3/2 for 2, like again, Garrett's Companion was a card that saw play. Like, tier 3 play, like fringe play, but it saw constructed play. And it is worse than this card. So that's a little weird. And then Verdant Crescendo is another one that I could totally see being playable if the Nisa is playable, which again we'll get to. But it's 4 mana, Rampant Growth, and search your graveyard or library for the special Nisa. Which is another thing about both of these spells, the red one as well. They can get it back from your graveyard, not just your library, which is obviously for play with the dual deck, but it makes it a lot easier to play your Verdant Crescendo with just the one bad Nisa,
Yeah.
Because now your Crescendos aren't dead. And then Woodland Stream is blue-green duel that hopefully we won't need, but maybe we do, and that would be awkward.
Yeah, I think it's like the duels, like, yeah, this a similar point, and the Verdant Crescendo, like, I wasn't giving it a lot of credit until you said that. So, like, if we can consider the Nissa to be like 0.7 of a card, I don't think you can get all the way to a card. But like, if we can consider it in some way, it's definitely got like the Muanvuli Acid Moss feel to it, where it might find a home by accident.
Yeah, it might backdoor to a fringe home.
Yeah.
Because Nisa's Pilgrimage rotating is like pretty substantial. Like that's one of the cards that a lot of standard decks are going to miss the most. And so without that, and if like ramp is a lot worse, and maybe instead of like going from 2 to 4 being important, or going from 3 to 5 being important, now for whatever reason going from 4 to 6 is actually important, maybe because now you can go from 2 to 4 more easily, something like that, then that could totally be a playable card,
I think I definitely agree with the idea that like this card is like in the realm of troublesome. It's not as fringe as the other concerns we've had so far.
Right.
But the concerns in general are in the fringe category. It's just like
yes.
Any sort of like loophole or abuse comes to mind as like worthy of at least like, hey, just saying, you know.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. These are like sub 1% concerns, but that doesn't
Terrain
mean
elemental. I think is like 5%.
That's the 3/2.
Yeah, that could definitely be in like a 16 land green deck.
Stompy deck.
Yeah. Like mono white humans play some cards that would never see play. It's like if there's a mono green deck that's really similar that has like strange elemental buffs.
Yeah.
Like a Lorwyn, a new Lorwyn set with like Smoke Weavers or whatever. Like this card could like a 1-mana Smoke Weaver, let's say. Like this card definitely hits home.
No, I agree.
Like a land comes into play, draw a card, tap for mana, used for elementals only. Like that, this card would see play in that deck.
Yeah. I agree. So let's go over the Planeswalkers themselves quickly. The possibly laziest Planeswalker name that I've ever seen in the game, Chandra, Pyro Genius.
Yeah, kind of full of herself a little bit.
Yeah, little ego
like
on
proud?
her.
I thought she was like aggressive proud, not like title proud. She doesn't really like. She doesn't occur to me as like a person who would want like the title of like CEO. I think she just wants to be badass. Like she just wants to beat the opponent up, you know?
Yeah, I agree.
So, like,
also, like,
seems like really friendly and PR, like political. Like,
yeah.
Like, in the picture, she's like kind of uncomfortably happy.
Well, genius to me is like a very blue word.
Yeah, right.
So that's a little weird. But 4 RR, 5 loyalty, and +2 to start. So 7 loyalty is a lot. But the plus only deals 2 damage to an opponent, which theoretically isn't very good, but also if there are a bunch of Planeswalkers that are coming into play and immediately minusing and then sticking around for extra value, the 3-mana Ajani syndrome, then this thing coming down, going up to 7 loyalty and shooting and finishing off a Planeswalker is like a legitimate thing.
It's no Sargon, but if you want a win con that's not just straight awful, that like in the set lacks Flame Tongue Kabus, like this is right up my alley.
Yep, 3 mana or 3 loyalty. It deals 4 damage to a creature, so it sticks around with 2 loyalty and protects itself, which is obviously one of the keystone like attributes of good Planeswalkers, especially expensive ones need to be able to protect themselves. And then the ultimate is -10, which is conveniently 3 pluses away instead of 2, and it infernos them.
Which is about as weak as it gets.
Yeah, as far as ultimates go, especially for 6 mana Planeswalkers, the ultimate, you're not playing this card for the ultimate, if you're playing it at all, which I doubt you are. Nissa, Nature's Artisan, 4 GG, 5 loyalty, +3. So this one starts on 8 theoretically, which the pluses only gain 3 life, which is not great, but 8 loyalty is really hard to kill. And then -4, reveal the top 2 cards of your library, put all land cards from among them onto the battlefield and the rest into your hand. So just like super divination.
There would need to be like a corpse dance for Planeswalkers for that to see play.
Which
like,
there is.
Put a Planeswalker into play for 1 turn and then have it die. So use the minus ability. That's basically the spell. It's like use a minus ability from a Planeswalker in your graveyard for 1 mana. Like that could be a card.
Right.
Essentially.
I mean, to me,
that's the fear I have. That one's the more like in the right conditions, like if you can activate this ability for a very small amount of mana, like that's the ability that would be abusable. The rest of it, like +5/+5 trample, like okay, if I can cast Wrath of God, then this won't be a problem.
Yep. Yeah, the ultimate from 5 and +3 is 12, so again it's that extra turn, and creatures you control get +5/+5 and trample until end of turn, just to overrun, not really ever going to be used. This Planeswalker, if it sees play, is likely to like come down in plus and then minus twice, and be like the sort of mono green ramp type of, kind of like a really bad 2G GG Garrick.
Yeah, Really, really bad. Yeah, like the minus ability is like the plus ability on the Garrick. It's crazy.
Yeah, exactly.
I definitely agree that like the Nissa it needs to gain a lot more life than 3 for this to be relevant. Like otherwise, like the worst case scenario is the deck that wants this is a control deck with no creatures.
Yeah.
So like getting like people just won't attack the Nissa. Like who cares, you know?
Right.
And the worst case scenario, you're doing -4 to draw a card. Like in probably the most like optimistic of circumstances, you probably aren't. You're at the point in the game where you're missing land drops anyway. I'm less scared about this one, unless there's like again like some weird like strategy where you can like flicker planeswalkers for really cheap from your hand, like some like cauldron dance or like
something absurd
through
like
the
that.
breach or like for like 1 mana for planeswalkers, something weird.
But there's also like 3 or 4 like legit planeswalkers in the set, which we will get to. So that's not. So even that in that market, like this thing's gonna get boxed out.
That's pretty true, and I'm kind of reaching on like ways that I'm only reaching for these cards too, just in case you're thinking like, why is he going off these tangents? Just I'm trying to think of ways that this could backfire if like cards that are not that are
right, yeah,
could exist.
Yeah. We're looking for ways for this decision by WotC to end up making things awkward. Exactly. I was gonna say that this planeswalker doesn't protect herself, but she does insofar as you wouldn't want to kill her anyway because she doesn't do anything. Which some would argue is a form of protection.
It's like a trophy more than a planeswalker.
Yeah. So you want to start with artifacts? We can do the lands first, I guess. Or do you have anything else to say about the set in general before we get into the nitty-gritty of the cards?
I can't imagine. I mean, I think I've overstated my interest in.
We have, which is why I have you on, so that we can both just talk at each other forever, because neither of us will ever shut up.
Well, I mean, I don't have any ambition. So no.
Yeah, I got nowhere to be.
I got nowhere to be.
Well, that's also why I figured this would be a 2-parter, because there's no way that we could be like, okay, Greg and AJ, keep it tight. Like, no, it's not going to happen.
I thought you were traumatized video edit.
Thought I was what?
I thought you were traumatized from the last video edit, so that's why it was a 2-parter.
Yeah, if you're unfamiliar, last time I did a podcast with Greg, it was supposed to be like, you record for like an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours, and then cut it down to about an hour. And we ended up speaking for like 4.5 hours. Oops.
Yeah, around there.
So then I had to like spend, a million days editing it down to 2 different podcasts. But that's what happens when you don't put a timer on us.